Did Jesus and Muhammad basically teach the same message? Did they stand for the same things? Did they behave the same way? Were they basically on the same team? Jesus, of course, is the central figure of what we now refer to as Christianity, and Muhammad is the founder of Islam. The only way to answer this question is to compare them side by side on the key issues, both their words and their deeds. So that's what we're going to do in this video. And to make it fair, we're only going to refer to each faith's own source texts. So when looking at Jesus, we're only going to refer to the Bible, and when looking at Muhammad, we're only going to refer to the Quran and Hadith. So let's get started. Here are 22 points of comparison between Jesus and Muhammad. On violence, Muhammad actually had quite a lot to say. He said, "I have been commanded to fight against people till they testify that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." That's Muslim 133. He also said, "Those who believe fight in the cause of Allah." Quran 476. He also said, "And fight with them until there is no more fitna, that is unbelief, and religion should be only for Allah." Quran 8:39. "O Prophet, exhort the believers to fight." Quran 8:65. "Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are people of the book," that is Christians and Jews, "until they pay the jizya," which is a kind of non-Muslim tax, "with willing submission and feel themselves subdued." That is Quran 9:29. Jesus, however, never advocated violence at all. In fact, he said, "He who lives by the sword will die by the sword, and blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." On dealing with enemies, Muhammad said, "And fight with them until there is no more persecution, and religion is only for Allah." That's Quran 8:39. Jesus said, "But I say, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there in that? For even corrupt tax collectors do that much. If you are kind only to your friends, how are you different from anyone else?" Muslim 4206 says that when Muhammad discovered a woman in adultery, he pronounced punishment, and she was put in a ditch up to her chest, and he commanded people, and they stoned her. Khalid bin Walid came forward with a stone which he flung at her head, and there spurted blood on the face of Khalid, and so he abused her. Muhammad, in fact, ordered the murder of many women, as referenced here. Now, Jesus, on the other hand, never harmed any woman, and in fact he saved a woman caught in adultery who was about to be stoned, saying, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone." At that point, everyone dropped their rocks and turned away, realizing their own hypocrisy and their own sin. Muhammad permitted stealing from unbelievers. The Hadith says, "After amassing a powerful army, Muhammad sent his forces to take the peaceful farming community of Khaybar by surprise. In the aftermath, he was dissatisfied with the amount of plunder and felt that the town's treasurer, Kinana, might be holding out on him. He had the man brought to him. When Muhammad asked him about the rest, he refused to produce it. So the apostle gave orders to Al-Zubair bin al-Awam, 'Torture him until you extract what he has.' So he kindled a fire with flint and steel on his chest until he was nearly dead. Then the apostle delivered him to Muhammad bin Maslama, and he struck off his head." So not just plundering, but a bit of torture in there too. Oh, and he also then forcibly married Sophia, the dead man's widow. Now Jesus, on the other hand, was unequivocal about theft, saying, "You must not steal." Muhammad permitted lying under certain circumstances, in battle, for bringing reconciliation amongst persons, and between husbands and wives. Jesus, on the other hand, didn't promote or permit lying under any circumstances, saying, "You must not bear false witness." Muhammad owned and traded slaves. One example is Muslim 3901, which says, "There came a slave and pledged allegiance to Allah's apostle on migration. Muhammad did not know that he was a slave. Then there came his master and demanded him back. Whereupon Allah's apostle said, 'Sell him to me,' and he bought him for 2 black slaves." Jesus neither owned nor traded any slaves. On the issue of revenge, Muhammad said, "If then anyone transgresses the prohibition against you, transgress ye likewise against him." In other words, take revenge. But Jesus said, You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. The Bible then goes on to say, dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. Now, Muhammad didn't just advocate revenge, he murdered those who insulted him. The Hadith records that 2 singing girls for Tana and her friend who used to sing satirical songs about the apostle, so he ordered that they should be killed. Jesus, on the other hand, murdered no one, ordered that no one should be murdered, and instead preached forgiveness for those who wrong you. Peter, for example, came to him and asked, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? No, not 7 times, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. This is Jesus' way of saying a limitless amount of times. And of course, most famously of all, even when Jesus was hanging naked on a cross, having been beaten to a pulp with his life draining away with every excruciating breath, nails driven through his hands and his feet in insufferable pain, he looked down on his abusers who were mocking him with compassion, saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Muhammad said, jihad in the way of Allah elevates one's position in paradise by 100-fold. He also said, I have been made victorious with terror, and also, killing unbelievers is a small matter to us. Jesus, in contrast, again said, God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. Muhammad had 13 wives and kept sex slaves. He also married Aisha, a 6-year-old girl, and consummated the marriage when she was 9. Jesus, on the other hand, was celibate and didn't marry any children. Muhammad said, O you who believe, fight those of the unbelievers who are near to you and let them find you in hardness. Jesus said, however, God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Muhammad ordered 65 military campaigns in his last 10 years of life and killed captives taken in battle. Jesus ordered no military campaigns, never took captives, never killed anyone, nor offered any approval of such war. Muhammad encouraged his men to rape enslaved women. Abu Dawood and Quran 424 says, some of the companions of the Apostle of Allah were reluctant to have intercourse with the female captives in the presence of their husbands, who were unbelievers. So Allah the Exalted sent down the Quranic verse, and all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hands possess. In other words, it's okay for these ones. Jesus, on the other hand, never encouraged rape and never enslaved women. Muhammad demanded that captured slaves and 1/5 of all loot taken in war be given to him. He says, and know that anything you obtain of war booty, then indeed for Allah is 1/5 of it, and for the messenger. Jesus, in contrast, said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Muhammad was never tortured, but he tortured others often. Not just Kanana, who we heard about earlier, but also in these verses too. Jesus suffered torture, but never tortured anyone. Before founding Islam, Muhammad was in a cave when a spiritual being apparently forced itself on him. Muhammad says, the angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it any more. After this experience, Muhammad became mentally disturbed to the point of becoming suicidal. Bukhari says, the Prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times to throw himself from the tops of high mountains. He considered that he might even be demon-possessed, saying, woe is me, poet or possessed, never shall Quraysh say this of me. I will go to the top of the mountain and throw myself down, that I may kill myself and gain rest. Jesus, on the other hand, never became suicidal, and in fact, before his ministry, when Satan took him to the top of a mountaintop and encouraged him to jump off, saying, if you are the Son of God, jump off, Jesus gave Satan a swift rebuke. In Al-Tabari 1440, Muhammad blessed the brutal murder of a half-blind man. When Jesus came across blind men, he healed them and he gave them their sight back. Muhammad ordered a slave to build the pulpit from which he preached Islam. Jesus, on the other hand, said that he came not to be served, but to serve, and he modelled this by washing his own disciples' feet. Muhammad demanded the protection of armed bodyguards when he was preaching, even in a house of worship. Jesus, on the other hand, chastised his disciples for trying to protect him with force. Muhammad died fat and wealthy from the spoils of war. Jesus, on the other hand, demanded nothing for himself, and indeed died without possessions. Muhammad advocated crucifying others. The Quran says, "The penalty for those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger and strive upon earth to cause corruption is none but that they be killed or crucified." Jesus, on the other hand, was crucified himself so that others could have life. Muhammad, according to his followers, had others give their lives for him. Jesus, on the other hand, gave his life for others. Muhammad said, "What are the greatest commandments? Belief in Allah and jihad in His cause." Jesus said, "What are the greatest commandments? Love God and love your neighbour as yourself." As you can see, Jesus and Muhammad did not preach the same message, didn't stand for the same things, didn't behave the same way, and were most definitely not basically on the same team. In fact, it would be impossible to find two people who are more diametrically opposed on pretty much every key issue you can think of. Now, it's up to you which you follow, or whether you follow neither at all. But what we simply can't do is pretend any longer that they said the same things. Christianity and Islam are rooted in very different characters and very different places. I know it goes against the postmodern narrative to say that, but these are the facts. And remember that nothing that you've heard in this video has come from any other source than each faith's own source text. The Quran and Hadith for Islam, and the Bible for Christianity. These books tell us that Jesus and Muhammad are very different characters who taught very different things.